In the shadowed corners of forgotten history, mysteries linger like ghosts, whispering secrets no one dares fully unveil. Join us as we journey through 10 chilling enigmas, where truth blurs, shadows deepen, and the unexplained threatens to unravel all we think we know. And wait until you hear the final twist. You don't want to miss it. The murder of Julia Wallace. Liverpool, 1931. Rain battered the cobblestones as fog hung thick in the air, swallowing the glow of gas streetlights on Wolverton Street. Inside number 29, the faint tick of a mantel clock echoed through the chilly parlor, shadows crouched in the corners like waiting intruders. On that January night, a housewife named Julia Wallace sat alone, unaware that death was creeping closer, its cold breath whispering through the cracks of her modest home, an omen of tragedy hovering just out of sight. William Herbert Wallace, a stoic insurance agent, left for his chess club, where a peculiar message awaited. A stranger named Qualtrough requested a meeting at an unfamiliar address, 25 Minlove Gardens East. The next day, Wallace wound through Liverpool's maze of streets, eventually realizing the address did not exist. He trudged home, only to discover a nightmare. His wife, Julia, lay lifeless in their sitting room, beaten to death, the room splattered with her blood. No signs of forced entry, no apparent robbery, only silence, broken by the haunting question, how could someone murder Julia in that tight window, as neighbors claimed to have heard nothing? Suspicion clung to William. Investigators zeroed in on the strange phone call. It had been placed from a call box mere yards from the chess club. Fingerprints, timelines, and alibis were dissected. Wallace was convicted, sentenced to death, only for the Court of Criminal Appeal, extraordinarily, to overturn it. Law enforcement scoured the scene, revisited witnesses, yet every promising lead dissolved into dead ends. Decades later, forensic detectives would test old evidence, searching futilely for overlooked clues. Locals spoke in hushed voices of a curse upon the house. Some whispered of a spectral shadow that lingered in the parlor, or a cold draft that forever chilled the spot where Julia was killed. Interviewers described the oppressive energy, as if the tragedy itself had stained the air, a presence that resisted all efforts at rational explanation. To this day, the murder of Julia Wallace remains unsolved. No one has been charged since. Residents, passing by the old brick home, sometimes feel an inexplicable shiver, as though the mystery still breathes within its walls, forever waiting for the truth to be unearthed. The Big Gray Man of Ben Macdui. Mist clawed at the ancient, wind-battered peak of Ben Macdui in the heart of Scotland's Cairngorms. The air was sharp with the tang of icy fog. Every breath prickled in the lungs. Far below, pine forests whispered in the damp, but up here, silence pressed in, oppressive and absolute. As dusk crept over the mountain, long shadows stretched across desolate boulders, transforming the landscape into a realm where reality blurred with legend. Hikers shivered not from cold, but from an inexplicable dread. Centuries of trekkers had whispered that something waited in the clouds on this lonely summit. 1889, Professor Norman Colley, himself a seasoned mountaineer, took a solitary path across the barren ridge. Later, he recalled, I heard something else other than my own footsteps. For every few steps I took, I heard a crunch, then another crunch, as if someone was walking after me, taking footsteps 3 or 4 times the length of my own. Though Colley saw nothing in the dense, swirling mist, a sense of primal terror overwhelmed him. He fled down the mountain, convinced an immense, invisible presence stalked him. Over the decades, other explorers described the same. Chilling footsteps in the fog, the shadow of an enormous humanoid figure just out of sight, or, most disturbing, a creeping fear of being watched, as if by enormous, ancient eyes. Colley's tale, presented in 1925 to the Cairngorm Club, stirred public fascination. Mountaineer Alexander Tunyon recounted firing a pistol at a shape barreling through the mist. Respected outdoorsman, not prone to fantasy, admitted fleeing the peak, shaken by hallucinatory dread and phantom sounds. Modern investigators, scientists and psychologists, suggested causes from the rare optical phenomenon known as a Brocken specter, when a person's shadow stretches enormous against the mist, to infrasound generated by the mountain wind, known to induce anxiety and paranoia. Yet, even experienced hikers, familiar with these tricks of nature, were unnerved by Ben MacDooey's particular terror. Whispers rose. Was there something more? A force neither animal nor apparition? Eyewitnesses spoke of a towering, gray-skinned figure over 10 feet tall, with gangly arms, silently shadowing travelers. Some said it was a wraith, a sentinel guarding a prehistoric gateway. Others believed it was a cryptid, the Highland equivalent of the Yeti, but with a mind that pressed thoughts of despair and hopelessness into human intruders. No proof, no remains, only chilling stories. The mystery of the big gray man endures, amplified by every gust of wind that mimics footsteps, every shadow that flits across the fog. Hikers still report feeling crushed by unease at Ben MacDooey's summit, drawn to cliff edges by a hypnotic terror. The Hestalen Lights. A frigid wind swept through Norway's Hestalen Valley, rattling pine branches and carrying the earthy scent of wet moss. At twilight, families peered out from frosted windows at the encroaching darkness, a hush falling over the isolated hamlet. Then, across the barren fields and above the silent river, orbs of light shimmered into existence, glowing, unearthly, silently drifting through the night air. The sky felt charged, the hairs on necks prickled, and time itself seemed to slow as silent witnesses gathered behind trembling curtains. Since at least 1811, locals had seen the Hestalen Lights, luminous white, yellow, or even blue spheres that floated, hovered, and darted just above the ground. In the early 1980s, residents endured an avalanche of sightings, lights zigzagging in the sky, pulsing and then vanishing, sometimes reappearing mere meters from stunned witnesses. One man recounted walking along a snowy track as a glowing ball the size of a basketball hovered beside him, casting eerie shadows and filling the air with a low, electrical hum. Photographers and journalists captured images, but explanations slipped away like mist. Scientists converged on the valley, their equipment bristling with sensors and cameras. Project Hestalen, initiated in 1983, installed automated observation stations which still vigilantly snap photos and collect data. Researchers proposed everything from atmospheric plasma, created by the unique chemical cocktail of minerals in the ground, to piezoelectric effects and even misidentified aircraft. New studies employed spectrography and electromagnetic scanning, but the lights consistently eluded definitive explanation. Teams from Norway, Italy, and even NASA have visited, recording inexplicable electromagnetic spikes and odd data signatures. Some villagers whispered about ancient Sami spirits or portals to another realm. A few researchers described a palpable sensation just before the lights appeared, an oppressive heaviness, a sense that something deliberately observed them. Occasional batteries drained without cause, radio static spiked, and strange animal behavior was reported on nights the lights burned brightest. The phenomenon rejected all attempts at categorization, moving with a purpose that made even hardened skeptics question what watched from the impenetrable darkness. Today, sightings have waned but not vanished. The Hestalen Lights remain inscrutable and unsolved, drawing scientists and curiosity seekers alike into the valley's cold embrace. Each night, as darkness cloaks the land, locals feel prying eyes in the gloom and wonder. Are the lights nature's chemical ballet, or something far more mysterious, patiently waiting to reveal its secret? The Great Amherst Mystery. The year was 1878. In the quiet Nova Scotia town of Amherst, the air inside Esther Cox's house felt thick and uneasy, as though it held back a storm just beyond the windows. Floorboards creaked with each tentative step, flames flickered and sputtered in the lanterns, and the scent of paraffin and cold sweat seemed to mingle. Outside, the wind clawed at the clapboard siding, but inside, a looming dread prowled the darkened corners, making even familiar childhood rooms feel hostile and watchful. It began subtly, shuffling sounds after midnight, bedsheets ripped away by unseen hands, and whispers echoing from empty rooms. Then came the violence. Furniture hurled across the parlor, crockery shattered without warning, and the burning touch of invisible claws. Esther herself suffered the most. She was thrown from her bed, scratched and bruised by an attacker no one could see. Townsfolk watched as writing appeared on walls, objects levitated, and Esther convulsed, screaming that the entities threatened to burn her alive. Amherst's peace was shattered, replaced with nightly spectacles of supernatural terror. In desperation, the family invited outsiders to witness the haunting. Walter Hubble, a curious stage actor with a taste for the paranormal, moved in and chronicled events in exhaustive detail. Ministers prayed, branding Esther possessed, while doctors puzzled over her inexplicable wounds. Even police officers, skeptical at first, witnessed the poltergeist's destructive displays. Reports reached beyond Amherst, attracting journalists and investigators from as far away as New England. But probes yielded only more questions. Investigators failed to catch a hoaxer or trickster in the act. Every explanation stumbled in the face of the chaos swirling through Esther's life. Neighbors soon whispered about a diabolical presence. Some claimed to see shadowy shapes slinking along the walls. Others heard voices chanting in forgotten tongues. Esther described an unbearable cold before each attack, a sinking dread, as if a malicious intelligence delighted in her terror. Hubble himself confessed to feeling watched, and for generations, locals would repeat stories of sudden icy gusts and doors slamming of their own accord. With no proof and no resolution, the Amherst mystery faded into legend. Yet, Esther's suffering left a lasting scar on the town. For decades, families avoided the old Cox house after sundown, some swearing the rooms never truly felt warm anymore. The case remains an enigma. Was it fraud, trauma, or something the living still cannot name? The disappearance of Benjamin Bathurst. A bone-chilling November wind cut through the fog as it rolled over the desolate roads of Prussia in 1809. Lantern light flickered against the dreary walls of the White Swan Inn in Perlberg. Hooves clattered on muddy stones outside, while inside, anxious whispers mingled with the tang of sweat and tobacco. Travelers eyed the darkness warily, knowing death and betrayal lurked on roads ruled by bandits and war. For Benjamin Bathurst, every shadow pressed close, every face brimmed with secret intent. Benjamin Bathurst was no ordinary visitor. He was a 25-year-old British diplomat, traveling incognito as Koch after a secret mission failed to sway Austria against Napoleon. On the night of November 25th, Bathurst and his aide, Herr Kraus, waited as horses were readied in the inn stables. Bathurst, tense and alert, excused himself to inspect his carriage. Moments later, when Kraus followed, the diplomat had vanished without a trace. Only his walking stick and cape remained, left in plain view on the carriage step. Panic rippled through the inn. No one had seen Bathurst depart, yet he had melted into the night as if the fog itself had swallowed him whole. The British embassy launched an urgent hunt. Bathurst's wife, driven by desperation, scoured the forests with teams of local police and bloodhounds. Investigators interrogated townspeople and scoured the area for weeks, finding scattered clues: a pair of trousers in the woods, a murderously slashed coat, but no evidence to confirm robbery or struggle. Speculation ran rampant. Napoleon's agents? Bandits? An act of madness? No credible witnesses came forward, and Bathurst, it seemed, had been erased from the earth in the blink of an eye. Rumors swelled of a supernatural force at work, that the road was cursed, that Bathurst encountered a spectral abductor. Locals whispered of a phantom carriage seen gliding into the forest, and some claimed the diplomat's spirit still wandered the lonely paths, seeking justice for his untold fate. Strange footsteps in the underbrush, chilling drafts that set candles guttering, and spooked animals fed a growing legend. This disappearance belonged to powers beyond a mortal grasp. Decades later, unease still hung over Perlberg. The mystery of Bathurst's vanishing gnawed at the imagination of historians and amateur sleuths alike. No body, no confession, no resolution. Only the sense that something monstrous or conspiratorial had prowled those roads, devouring a manhole. With every retelling, the possibility of the inexplicable endures, leaving behind a chilling question. How could a person simply cease to exist, leaving behind only fear and mist? The lost sublet mine. Dawn broke over the wind-scoured Guadalupe Mountains of West Texas, painting jagged cliffs gold beneath a pale sky. The air brimmed with the metallic scent of dust and sage, while unseen creatures skittered among sun-warmed rocks. Shadows stretched between gnarled junipers as rumors snaked through the ghost town saloons below, a mountain hiding a secret hoard. Out in the biting cold, the landscape felt hostile, alive with whispers and the promises of riches buried deep beneath stone. Throughout the 19th century, Ben Sublet became a legend in these badlands. Locals whispered of a battered old miner who stumbled into the Dog Canyon saloon, pockets bulging with luminous gold nuggets. Sublet never stayed long enough for questions, leaving behind only rumor that he'd found a secret vein of gold so rich, it seemed to defy what geologists knew about the arid mountain range. No one ever witnessed his journey into the wilderness, but they saw the proof in the gold dust he spent heedlessly on drinks and supplies, gold more plentiful than the desert should have yielded. Eager fortune seekers tried shadowing his trails, waiting for him to slip, but Sublet always vanished into the canyons and returned alone, a sly grin beneath his battered hat. Treasure hunters, spurred by greed and curiosity, pursued Sublet's legend relentlessly. Some spied on him for weeks. Others attempted to bribe or trick him. Not even his own son learned the mine's location. When Sublet died, his secret died with him. In the decades since, geologists and historians explored the Guadalupe's crags, taking rock samples, digging shafts, and wielding advanced imaging tools, aided by recent geophysical surveys, but found no sign of a gold vein matching Sublet's bounty. Modern mineral studies suggest the range lacks the right geology for such a deposit, amplifying the puzzle instead of solving it. The land itself rebelled against discovery. Many who searched for the mine claimed the desert turned against them. Dust storms blotted out trails, compasses spun wildly, and horses collapsed on narrow ridges. Some spoke of seeing ghostly figures among the rocks, whispering warnings, or of hearing Sublet's laughter on the wind after failed expeditions. It was as if the secret guarded itself, refusing to yield to greed, science, or stubbornness. Time has only thickened the legend. All that remains is a solitary hole in the earth and stories passed down in hushed tones in dusty taverns. Some insist the gold was real. Others believe it was all Sublet's grand deception. The Guadalupe Mountains watch, mute and imposing, concealing whatever truth lies beneath their ancient stone, daring a new generation to try their luck and perhaps vanish forever into the land's unforgiving silence. The Aurora Incident. In 1897, the dusty Texas town of Aurora was swaddled in silence, its narrow streets haunted by creaking windmills and the faint aroma of mesquite smoke. Late at night, when cicadas hushed and livestock slept, a restless energy seemed to coil in the warm air. On the morning of April 19th, the hush shattered. Locals awoke to the sound of a shattering crash and an electric stillness that made the hairs rise on their arms. The land itself felt changed, as though the ordinary had buckled beneath something wholly alien. As dawn broke, townsfolk rushed toward Judge Proctor's property, eyes wide with disbelief. There, tangled amidst the shattered timbers of a windmill, lay the wreckage of a bizarre, cigar-shaped craft. Metal shards, lighter and stranger than any iron, glittered in the sun. Fragments spattered the ground, smoldering with otherworldly heat. Even more shocking, the remains of a diminutive pilot, not of this world, as witnesses later claimed, lay mutilated among the debris. The townspeople, shaken but awestruck, gathered the pieces and gave the entombed being a Christian burial beneath a simple marker in the local graveyard. News of the crash rippled across the country, attracting journalists and skeptics alike. In the following years, UFO investigators combed Aurora for clues, uncovering old newspaper clippings and interviewing descendants of those original witnesses. The cemetery's burial plot, long since unmarked after a theft decades ago, became a focal point of research, but exhumation requests were denied. Metal scraps allegedly retrieved from the site underwent scientific scrutiny. Some analyses found anomalous alloys, while others dismissed them as mundane. Local legends clung to every version: an alien visitation, a misidentified airship, or a clever hoax to draw a railroad line to the dying town. Residents whispered that the area around the graveyard remained unnaturally cold, that mechanical watches stopped when brought near the supposed burial site, and that strange lights sometimes hovered over the fields at night. Some researchers claimed their cameras malfunctioned without warning. Others suggested a curse lingered, as if the land itself recoiled at what it had witnessed, an encounter with the unknowable, forever stained in memory. Today, the Aurora incident straddles the line between local folklore and unsolved mystery. With the original grave now lost, and the debris scattered to collectors and time, all that remains is a spectral anxiety, a sense that something extraordinary collided with the mundane on that spring morning. The Black Mausoleum. Night descends over Edinburgh's Greyfriars Kirkyard, draping mausoleums and headstones in spectral moonlight. A wind sighs through iron gates, carrying scents of damp earth and old stone. In the far corner, the ominous Black Mausoleum hulks beneath twisted trees, cold masonry slick with years of rain. Visitors clutch torches tighter, feeling a strange chill even on summer nights, a sensation as if ancient eyes are fixed on every movement. The mausoleum encases Sir George "Bloody" Mackenzie, the feared Lord Advocate notorious for persecuting the Covenanters in 17th century Scotland. For 3 centuries his resting place was just another shadow in the cemetery, until 1999, when a homeless man broke into the tomb to escape a storm. The next day, reports surfaced: bruises, burns, fainting fits, and encounters with an unseen assailant plagued those who dared approach. News of a poltergeist, cruel and violent, swept through the city. Witnesses described invisible hands gripping their throats, icy gales inside the sealed mausoleum, and even mysterious scratches appearing under their clothes. The spate of injuries soon numbered in the hundreds. Paranormal experts, local historians, and documentary crews descended upon Greyfriars. Some cynically blamed suggestibility and the power of urban legend. Yet, medical professionals recorded unexplained physical symptoms, and local authorities temporarily sealed the tomb. Thermal cameras captured sudden drops in temperature, and electromagnetic spikes were frequently detected around the crypt. Historian Richard Felix publicly dubbed it one of the most convincing supernatural cases of all time. Despite a forensic sweep, no rational cause for the rash of attacks and faintings ever emerged. The tales escalated. Some saw shadowy figures dart behind headstones. Others claimed to hear guttural whispers echoing from the cold stone. One visitor awoke sprawled on the grass, face damp with tears, and no memory of collapse. Guides reported the sensation of being watched, gripped by a sadness so profound it felt as though Mackenzie himself still raged against the living. Huddled crowds, caught in the midnight flicker of lanterns, sensed something ancient and wrathful prowling the cemetery's heart. Despite the mausoleum being sealed, unexplained phenomena persist. Burns that appear without warning, chilling drafts, and sudden dread striking even the most skeptical passerby. Greyfriars remains a destination for the brave and the curious, but many leave shaken by a presence that defies explanation. As long as the Black Mausoleum stands, the story lingers, a whisper on Edinburgh's coldest nights that some terrors refuse to rest, and that the past is not yet finished with the living. The murder of Jelly Robbel. Munich, 1931. A heavy rain pounded against the windows of Adolf Hitler's stately apartment at 16 Prinzregentenplatz, distorting the city lights and cloaking the world outside in blurred streaks. Inside, the air was stifling, thick with the tension of unspoken arguments and perfumed by the faint aroma of cigarettes and stale flowers. Each room felt colder than the last, shadows pressed into corners by the harsh glare of electric lamps. The grand piano, silent, waiting, cast a black reflection onto polished floorboards, silently bearing witness to a night heavy with secrets and dread. Angela Jelly Robbel, Hitler's young and captivating half-niece, was found lifeless in her bedroom, a single gunshot wound in her chest. The weapon, Hitler's own Walther pistol, lay at her side. Just hours earlier, neighbors had heard shouting, doors slamming, and the echo of heated words ricocheting through the apartment. Jelly had wanted to tour Vienna and escape the suffocating grip of her uncle, but her desperate pleas ended in tragedy. Rumors circulated instantly. Had she really taken her own life due to heartbreak and fear of a looming performance? Or was it murder carried out in a fit of rage and jealous obsession? The Munich police, awed and intimidated by Hitler's rising political power, started their inquiry with caution. Witness accounts surfaced of Jelly's bruises and a broken nose, injuries inconsistent with suicide, suggesting violence. Journalists sniffed out inconsistencies and clandestine meetings, yet the official story delivered by Nazi officials was swift: suicide, brought on by anxiety. Evidence was quietly collected and stowed away, and a persistent journalist who dug too deep was arrested, later dying mysteriously at Dachau. Forensic reviews in later years uncovered flawed procedures and lost evidence, while those closest to Jelly hushed their doubts, frightened by the reach of political retribution. Those who entered the apartment after the tragedy described a heaviness, as if the rooms themselves groaned with guilt and unfinished business. Jelly's friends whispered of her suffering under Hitler's control, his bans, surveillance, and jealous rages. Those same walls, once filled with Jelly's music and laughter, became silent, holding on to the memory of what happened behind closed doors. Some claimed to hear sobs in the apartment at night, a fleeting chill brushing past them, hinting that a restless spirit lingered. Though almost a century has passed, the full truth still hides in the blackout of those Munich nights. The murder of Jelly Robel, ruled a suicide in the face of glaring contradiction, remains an open wound in history, shadowed by fear, ambition, and the chilling silence of those who knew more than they dared tell. All that remains is an enduring question: how far can the reach of power extend to obscure the truth, and what secrets must still haunt the rooms where Jelly's laughter fell silent forever? As these stories fade into the night, their unanswered questions echo in our minds. Some mysteries may never surrender their secrets, leaving us to ponder what lies beyond reason. But that restless curiosity, our hunger for the truth, is what keeps the shadows alive, calling us ever deeper into darkness. Feel free to leave your comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more mysteries like this. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.